But life has been awfully good to me and Charlie, so we have no complaints.
What you don't want to be is like the man, and they have his funeral, and the minister said, now it's the time for somebody to say something nice about the deceased. And nobody came forward, and nobody came forward. He said, surely somebody can say something nice about the deceased, and nobody came forward. And finally one man came up and he said, well, he said, his brother was worse.
Yep.
You want to get good at something which is competitive, you have to think about it a lot and learn a lot and practice doing it a lot. And the way the world is constructed in this field, you have to keep learning because the world keeps changing and your competitors keep learning. So you just have to get up each morning and try and go to bed that night a little wiser than you were when you got up. And if you keep doing that for a long time and accumulate some experience, good and bad, as you try and master what you're trying to do, people who do that almost never fail utterly. They may have a bad period when luck goes against them or something, but very few people have ever failed with that. If you have the right temperament, you may rise slowly, but you're sure to rise.
Charlie, did you take any business courses in school?
None. I took accounting.
And when did you start valuing businesses, and how'd you go about it?
When I was a little boy. I can remember I would come down to the Omaha Club, and there was an old gentleman who hit the Omaha Club about 10:30 every morning. He obviously did almost no work, and yet was quite prosperous.
He became your ideal. Huh?
Yeah, well, but he made me very curious as a little boy. I said to my father, how in the hell does he do that? And he said, Charlie, he's in a business where he enjoys practically no competition. He gathers up and renders dead horses. Well, that was an example of avoiding competition by one stratagem. And if you keep asking questions like that of reality, starting at a young age, you gradually learn. And Warren, you were doing the same thing.
Well, yeah, thankfully he went beyond his original insight there.
But larger. I don't think the average return of a skilled investor over the next 50 years is going to be as good after all factors as it was over the last 50 years. So I think reduced expectations are the best defense any investor has. And after that, I think Berkshire's a pretty good bet.
Charlie's big on lowering expectations.
Absolutely. That's the way I got married. My wife lowered her expectations.
And he lived up to them. Can you explain?
Can you give all of us, and particularly my daughter Katie, who is here today, the Peter Lynch 2-minute monologue explaining the business of Berkshire Hathaway and its merits as a long-term investment for future decades?
Okay, Charlie, you talk to Katie. I'm going to have some fudge.
All right. I'll try that. We've always tried to stay sane, and other people, a lot of them, like to go crazy. That's a competitive advantage. Number two, as we've gotten bigger, we've used this sort of golden rule that we want to treat the subsidiaries the way we would want to be treated if we were in the subsidiaries. And that, again, is a very rare attitude in corporate America, and it causes people to come to us who don't want to come to anybody else. That is a long-term competitive advantage. We've tried to be a good partner to people who come to us and need a partner with more money. That is a competitive advantage. And so we are leaving behind a field that's very competitive and getting into a place where we're more unusual. This was a very good idea. I wish we'd done it on purpose.
White Charms was for my mom, and my father loves his stock. I have a future tasting chocolate. This weekend has really rocked. Thank you very much. And really, what is your view on PetroChina?
If you come up at the break, Charlie and I will have taken all the pieces out of here that we like best, and you will get the rest. Charlie, do you have anything to add to that?
She wants to know what you think about PetroChina.
It's funny. I saw her out there in the shopping area, and I knew that she had PetroChina on her mind. We bought PetroChina a few years ago, between 4% and 6% of GDP. They have jumped upward And you would not think this would be sustainable over time. Excuse me just one second. Charlie, want to talk for a second? You've just heard him on the subject. But corporate profits, when they get up to 8% plus of GDP,
what key steps would you recommend to correct the mindset of typical investor like me, which is what you narrate as lemmings-like, the crowd mindset?
about the mindset of an investor? Is that...
He wants you to advise him as to how he can become less like a lemming.
Well, since you repeated the question, I'm going to let you give the first answer to that, Charlie. Until he eats about 1,000 calories a day.
He wants to invest less like a lemming.
Oh, I understand that. I was giving you the first shot at it, but I will tell you what changed my own life on investing. I started investing when I was 11.
I think she's asking about the healthcare business.
That part I got.
And whether or not, with the much bad ethics being present, we have anything to contribute about doing well in that sector. Is that about right?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I understand the question. It's still yours. I'd be glad to answer it, but I'm eating candy at the moment.
That has tended to go into the too hard pile at Berkshire. The solar solutions are coming because they're so obviously needed. And regarding solar panels on roofs, I never pass an opportunity to decline to put them in because I think they're going to get a lot cheaper. And I'd rather wait.
Well, at 86, you can afford to, Charlie.
Yes, I have to think about the long term. And I'm going to miss you terribly.
Touche.
It reminded me of the wife, and the husband said, "Will you still love me if I lost all my money?" And she says, "Yes, I would always love you, but I would miss you terribly." Well, the solar is coming because we have no other practical alternative. And it should be regarded as a very good thing, because what in hell would modern civilization do if we had no alternative to fossil fuels? That would be a really serious problem. And so, of course, the cities that are choking to death in their own poisonous air are going to go to electric cars, and we're going to get a lot more renewable energy from the sun. I'm also quite negative about growing corn in America using fossil water and fossil fuels in order to burn up in automobiles. That is a stunningly stupid idea, and another example of how our politicians have failed us. But I'm enormously optimistic about what is going to happen. Our politicians will eventually create a big electric grid that's way better than what we have now. We'll eventually have the energy we need, and we will be way better for it. And it's wonderful that these technical problems are proving solvable. It is not all that important over the long term if solar power costs twice as much as what we're used to. That's a blip in the economic future of our country. It's just a blip. And I think it's probably a good thing that we have all these big capital needs coming that will create a better system in the end and solve our problems in the end. So I'm quite optimistic. But in terms of immediate business decisions, I think frequently the right answer is counterintuitive. Like mine say, if you want to put in solar panels, wait. They're going to get cheaper. Warren, you want to criticize that?
I have nothing to add.
On the costs and benefits of ethanol production in this country.
Well, you know, even McCain has had a counter-revelation lately. He's decided that ethanol is wonderful now that he realizes that that's the way they think in Iowa. And I'm somewhat in his position here, but I won't allow that to stop me. I think the idea of running automobiles on corn is one of the dumbest ideas that has gotten widespread acceptance that I have ever seen. But in a government with a lot of political pressures, weird decisions get made. But that has to be about as crazy a decision as was ever made. You want a social safety net under people, and the most basic safety net of all is food. And you're going to raise the cost of food so you can run these automobiles around, and you use up just about as much hydrocarbons making the corn as you get out of the ethanol. No, I would say that, and you don't count in the cost of the ethanol the cost of the topsoil that goes away forever when you, I love Nebraska. I'm a Nebraskan to my core, but this was not my home state's finest moment.
We're going to try and smuggle him out of town tonight.
It's the single most precious resource of the United States are its hydrocarbon reserves, the ones that are right here. And of course, I want to use up, and I'm a Puritan. I always want to suffer now to make the future better, because I think that's the way grown-ups should behave. And so I'm all for using up the other fellow's oil and conserving our own. And I think the idea of energy independence is one of the stupidest ideas I've ever heard grown people talk about. Think of what terrible shape we'd been if we'd achieved total energy independence way earlier. We wouldn't have any oil and gas left at all. Wouldn't that be a wonderful condition? We don't want energy independence. We want to conserve this stuff. And thank God other people have some of this precious stuff they're willing to sell. I have the exact opposite idea on this subject from most people. And of course, I think I'm right.
This is Charlie's version of saving up sex for your old age. You know.
No, we're going to use the oil. Yeah, I think you would understand any presentation using the word EBITDA if every time you saw that word, you just substituted the phrase bullshit earnings.
I knew he'd do it sooner or later, folks.
And he made it through the morning, but never all day.
What would you say, Charlie?
Well, when you used the word EBITDA, I thought to myself, I don't even like hearing the word. There's so much nutcase thinking involving EBITDA. Earnings before what really counts in costs.
Yeah. We prefer EBE, which is earnings before everything.
Right.
It's nonsense. And I mean, if you compare a business that leases pencils or something like that, where they all get depreciated in a 2-year period, and then compare that to some business that uses virtually no capital, like See's Candy, it's just nonsense. But it works for the people that sell businesses.
It's such a rotten way to run a civilization, to make the basic accounting wrong. It is very much like making the engineering wrong when you're building a bridge. And when I see reputable people making these perfectly ridiculous arguments to the effect that it's unthinkable that options be expense.
Or it's too difficult to value.
Well, because it's too difficult to value, or God knows what reason. And a lot of them are people you'd be glad to have marry your daughter. And
Yeah, because they're rich, for one thing.
Yet the truth of the matter is they're somewhere between crazy and crooked.
Put him down as undecided.
There's an old saying, dumb is forever.
I think, Charlie? Charlie's 91, and his habits aren't that different than mine. They're slightly better, but
There's no question about it. The way I look at it is, sugar is an enormously helpful substance. It prevents premature softening of the arteries. And the way I look at it is that if I die a little sooner, that'll just be avoiding a few months of drooling in a nursing home.
Habits are what you do every day. If you exercise, if you think exercising a lot when you're younger is important to longevity.
Well, that's a very, I have almost no exercise except when the Army Air Corps made me do exercise. I've done almost no exercise on purpose in my life. If I enjoyed the activity like tennis, I would exercise. But for the first 99 years, I've gotten by without doing any exercise at all.
It is really important to have good financial habits, and I think anything you can do very early through the school system, would certainly have my vote. Charlie?
Well, I'm not sure the schools are at fault. I would place most of the fault with the parents. I think the most powerful example is the behavior of the parent. And so if you're...
I agree with it. The most important thing is the parents, but not everybody gets the right parents.
Yeah, well, it's very hard to fix people who have the wrong parents.
Well, let's just say you had the job of fixing people that had the wrong parents. What would you do about it?
Well, let's suppose you had the job of living forever. What would you do about it? I mean, it gets to be so impractical. Who would ever believe that I would have any ability to fix all the people that have the wrong parents?
How about a few?
I don't think I'm good at that either. The only thing I've ever been slightly good at in my life is raising the top higher. It's just that they left the talent out of me. I don't scorn it. I think it's a noble work. I'm no good at it. I don't think you're so hot either.
If he had been Republican, it'd have been stronger. Stop by our Secret Millionaires Club, though, and get some ideas.
By the way, the main troubles with education in this field are probably not in the grade schools. They're probably in the colleges. There's a lot of asininity taught in the finance courses at the major universities, and even the departments of economics have much wrong with them. So if you really want to start fixing the world, you shouldn't assume that when it gets highfalutin, it's a lot better.
Well, there was certainly a period of at least 20 years, I would say, when I think the net utility of knowledge given to finance majors was negative in major universities. I think maybe it's getting better now, but it is.
Imagine that net utility was negative. It was pluperfect asinine.
Yeah.
We should use normal English.
I'm worried about what English you're going to use. I don't want to give on.
Pertains to. I'm curious on your thoughts as it relates to the expanding global population and investing in cattle, and if you think it's wise. Thank you.
Charlie?
I think it's one of the worst business I can imagine for somebody like us.
There's nothing personal about this.
Yeah. Not only is it a bad business, we have no aptitude for it.
Some people have done well in it, Charlie.
Well, yeah, they have one good year every 20 years or something.
I know you guys like steak.
Very much.
But
yeah.
not owning cattle.
Yeah. No, actually, I know a few people that have done reasonably well in cattle, but they usually own banks on the side or something. And then have to sell it for some reason. It's a tribute to the lobbying power of a rather small group that has done very well off this particular activity. Charlie, can you think of any reason why it's 60% long-term gain if you hold something for 30 seconds?
Well, of course it's crazy. It's neither fair nor sensible. And but if a small group with a lot of money and influence cares a great deal about something and the rest of us are indifferent, why, they tend to win before our legislative bodies. That's just the way it is. I always like Bismarck's remark that you shouldn't watch two things, sausage making and legislation making.
Okay, with those hopeful words, we're going to break for lunch. But before we break for lunch,
that he makes. Jeremy Siegel, the second book, By the Try and the True, Triumph over the Old and the New.
It's had no effect on us. Charlie?
No, is that the fellow who is very optimistic about common stock investment over long periods of time?
The University of Pennsylvania, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think he's demented.
Well, he's a very nice guy, Charlie. But,
well, he may well be a very nice guy, but he's comparing apples against elephants and trying to make accurate projections for what is a very reasonable expenditure. Social Security is very successful. Apart from the disability element, which is relatively small, there's practically no fraud. It's hard to fake being dead. And furthermore, it's a reward for work. All kinds of people are working in this country because they want to eventually qualify for Social Security. Just as many people are doing dangerous military service because they want the pension that will come eventually. So Social Security is a very capitalistic institution with profoundly good effects. It's one of the most successful things the government has ever done in terms of efficiency and good effects. And in a Republican administration that may shortly have to do something really unpleasant, like face down North Korea or Iran over atom bombs, is wasting its goodwill over some twaddle that a bunch of economists that haven't thought it through properly devoutly believe. It's a very sad occurrence. How can you remember one of my favorite sayings as you do this asset allocation? If a thing's not worth it doing at all, it's not worth doing well.
Yeah. You can see why Ben Franklin turned the mantle over to Charlie.
Who are your present-day role models?
Well, I've had a number of them, and I'm not sure I want to name them because the ones you don't name they might feel a little left out. But the one thing I've been very lucky on is that the ones I've had have never let me down. So I've never had that experience where you've looked up enormously to somebody and then had that person let you down in some way, which would be a terrible experience and very hard to get over. And I'm sure some people have had that in marriage and they've had it in business. And the worst situation, of course, is if you have it with your parents. But that did not happen. In fact, the reverse happened with me. So I can just tell you that choosing your heroes is very important. I tell that to the students when they come, because you are going to gravitate toward the behavior of those around you. I tell people to be sure and associate with people that are better than you are. Marry up, and hope you find somebody who doesn't mind marrying down. And it will do wonders for you. It was a huge help to me, I can tell you that. Charlie?
Yeah, I would say that you're not restricted to living people in picking your mentors. Some of the very best people are dead. I have a problem that Warren has less of. I don't like being too much an example to people who want to get rich by being shrewd and buying and passively holding securities. I don't think that's enough of a life. If you wrest a fortune from life by being shrewder than other people and buying little pieces of paper, I don't think that's an adequate contribution in exchange for what you're taking. So I like it when you're investing money for an endowment or a pension fund or your relatives or something, but I never considered it enough of a life to merely be shrewd in picking stocks and passively holding them.
Yeah, running Berkshire has been far, far more fun than running, in my case, Buffett Partnership or just an investment fund. I mean,
you'd be less of a man if you run that partnership.
It'd be a crazy way to go through life.
Yeah.
I mean, it just, Berkshire is incredibly more satisfying.
So if you're good at just investing your own money, I hope you'll morph into doing something more.
And what's your dream now?
My dream? Well,
let's skip the first one.
sometime when I'm especially wishful, I think, oh, to be 90 again. And I got some advice for the young. If you've got anything you really want to do, don't wait till you're 93.
I'll do it. No, that's the same thing I would tell students, is that you can't always find it the first time or the second time, but when you go out in the world, look for the job that you would take if you didn't need a job. I mean, don't postpone that sort of thing. Somebody, I think it was Kierkegaard, said that, life must be evaluated backwards, but it must be lived forwards. And you want to sort of, Charlie says all he wants to know is where he'll die, so he'll never go there. And so you do want to do a certain amount of reverse engineering in life. I mean, that doesn't mean you can do everything that way, but you really want to think about what will make you feel good when you get older about your life, and you at least generally want to keep going in that direction.